Shabbat Shalom. This week's Parsha, Parshat Vayechi, ends Sefer Breshit, and in this Parsha, Yaakov, on his deathbed, calls in his children to give his last will and testament. Many people tend to compare what Yaakov says to the 12, what will become the 12 tribes of Israel, with what Moshe Rabbeinu says at the end of the Torah, in the Parshat V'zot Bracha, but actually there's a huge difference in that Moshe is blessing them. It says V'zot Bracha Asher Berach Moshe. It's a blessing that Moshe is blessing them, giving his blessing before he leaves this world, whereas Yaakov is not blessing him, and the Torah doesn't say it is. The Torah says that Yaakov called in his children and said, Hey asfu v'agida lachem et asher kratchem b'achrit yamim. Come in, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you at the end of days. And in fact, the first three sons get severely scolded. However, before this happens, Yaakov does give a blessing to his grandchildren. When Yosef comes with his two little boys, Menashe and Ephraim, Yaakov says, Kachem no elai v'avarachem, bring them to me, and I'll bless them. And then later on in that same scene, even though the Harsha begins with Yaakov saying Vayavarech et Yosef Yomar, he's blessing Yosef, one of his children. In fact, the blessing he gives there is again not to Yosef, but to his children. He blesses the children, Menashe and Ephraim. And then again, another thing that's special here for the grandchildren is this very strange sequence, which a lot of the Meforshim point out. It says that when Yosef came in with the two grandchildren, Yaakov saw them. Vayar Yisrael b'nei Yosef. Vayom Amiel. He saw them. He said, "Who are they?" 2 psukim later, V'nei Yisrael kavdu mizolkim v'lo yachol larot. He was blind. So what's going on here? He can see only his grandchildren. Otherwise, he's blind. He can see his grandchildren. He can't see the rest. He blesses his grandchildren, doesn't bless the others. And this perhaps may lie behind what the Rav Soloveitchik, says in one of his remarks in this parsha, that this parsha shows us the special relationship, or the direct relationship, that Yaakov had with his grandchildren. Neither Avraham nor Yitzchak had direct contact, direct relationship, direct conversation with their grandchildren. Yaakov was the first and only of our 3 forefathers who had a direct meeting, direct blessing to his grandchildren, and the Rav says this is what cements the tradition. As long as it was going on just from father to son, it wasn't firmly entrenched. But when Yaakov sort of jumped a generation and had a head-to-head meeting, eye-to-eye meeting with his grandchildren and blessed them, this cemented the tradition. Interesting remark, and as I said, the Parsha shows some very strong distinction between Yaakov's attitude towards his grandchildren and to his children. Of course, we know that parents can be more critical of the children and more doting on their grandchildren, but this is probably something else. Now, I want to spend the rest of this video talking about Yaakov's first remarks when he to his children, and particularly the very harsh remarks he makes to Shimon and Levi. Comes within a hair's breadth of cursing them. He says, Arur apam kiyaz. He doesn't curse them, he curses their anger. But Isi ben Yehuda, in one of the most ancient midrashim we have, says, Bikesh Yaakov v'kalalam. He wanted to curse them, but he just couldn't do it. He couldn't bring the words out of his mouth to curse his own children. And so he ended up cursing their anger. And again, there are some strange things going on in this parsha in connection with that. For example, we assume, it's clear from him from the Pshat, I'm not talking about the Midrashic elaborations, that he's angry at them because of their massacring the people of Shechem. But oddly enough, at the very last words he says to Yosef in the parasha that's before the meeting with the children is that Vanila Tati Lacha Shechem Echad Alechecha Asher Lakachti Miyad Hamori B'Charbi V'Kashti. Yaakov is almost boasting that he conquered Shechem militarily with a sword and with bow and arrow. Now, this is the only place in the Tanakh where Yaakov appears to us as a warrior. And again, the Midrash, of course, is put off by this. It doesn't make any sense with what the Torah has told us so far about the story in Shechem or anything else in Yaakov with his attitude towards Esav or Lavan. But Ein Mekor Sevede Pshuto, we have to face up with what the Pshat says. The Pshat says here that Yaakov took Shechem by force. Now, it doesn't mean he massacred them the way Shimon and Levi did, but still, it sort of mollifies a bit the type of anger we would expect at Shimon and Levi. Now, I want to end with two very different interpretations of what Yaakov was telling Shimon and Levi by two of the greatest rabbis of the past century or so, Shimon and RaShaR Hirsche and our own Rav Yosef of Soloveitchik. Two very different, almost extremely different interpretations. And what's striking is that when one reads them today, in the light of our own situation now, with regard to the vicious and violent and bloodthirsty and enemies that we have in our own midst and in our neighbors and around the world, it's hair raising because their two different approaches seem to echo debates that have been going on within Jewish society and Israeli society for some time. I wouldn't want to extrapolate from them. I'll try not to, but I'll just summarize it. Shimon and RaShaR Hirsche says the following, that why was Yaakov so angry at Shimon and Levi? Because in most societies, all societies almost, there's a really big distinction between private morality and national morality. When you as an individual have a dispute with someone, you're not expected to, settle it violently. You're supposed to talk about it, maybe go to court, maybe have some sort of mediation. But on the national level, all these great civilized nations of the world, and not to mention the uncivilized brutes that we have here as well, shoot missiles and drop millions of tons of ordnance and just basically bomb their enemies to the ground. And it's considered okay on the national level. That type of a behavior is acceptable. If you do it in your private life, it's a crime. But Yaakov was telling him that Jewish morality is different, and that we demand the same restrictions and self-control and holding back on violent means on the national level as well as on the personal level. And therefore, it was wrong for Shimon and Levi to resort to violence against the people of Shechem, even if there was a sort of a national issue between the Jewish girl who was raped and the people who had raped her. The Rav, however, has a very, very different approach. It's almost hard to believe that it's only when you read it then you see what the Rav has to say. The Rav says this, that basically what Yaakov was angry was misplaced zealousy. The Rav says that almost none of these character traits are absolutely bad or good, including to be zealous, to take strong physical action in defense of a certain principle or something like that. And that Yaakov was angry that there is misplaced zealousy. But, he adds, sometimes when one is in distress or a community is in distress, zealots are needed to address the situation. If the Chashmonaim had not displayed the zealousness, Knesset Yisrael would not have survived. So Shimon and Levi were wrong mostly for not applying the same zealousness that they applied in Shechem when the other brothers wanted to sell Yosef into slavery. If they had taken the same forceful action then, Yosef would not have been sold. And the Rav ends up saying that this is actually a blessing. He regards this as a blessing, and he says, Jacob's blessing to Shimon and Levi was that their zealousness should remain, but only in the appropriate context. So it's hard to know. It's hard to know, what to do. But the Rav is clearly making. And I think that if I were to try to analyze the difference between the two approaches, I would say that the Shimon and RaShaR Hirsche is giving the pre-Holocaust, almost naive type of understanding, and the Rav is giving the post-Holocaust understanding, where we realize that sometimes the only alternative is to hit your enemies hard, hit them first, and hit them hard, and hit them again. But of course, I'm not going to extrapolate from their remarks. That I'm sure that if either of them were on today, they would be able to, on their own, express their views very clearly and eloquently. So I'm just relaying, what I've read and how I've digested it. So thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.